Enterprise. I'm going to go where no one has gone before. I'm going to put this thing together. So for 3 weeks I was busy sawing and sanding and drilling and putting it together. And finally, the day of the event, it was perfect. And I was putting a third coat of paint on it and had it outside in the garage drying. And I went in and put on my uniform, and I was doing my homework like a good Wiese. And then all of a sudden I heard the garage door open and my mom driving in. And in a state of panic, I threw everything down and went running into the garage. And there underneath my mom's left front wheel was my broken, destroyed Starship Enterprise. My dad took one look at what is this piece of junk and he said, "Das ist kaputt." Throw it out. It's worthless. It's no good if it's not perfect. It's not worthy of the Wiese name. My mother looked at it and said, "Well, it's not that bad. Try and fix it." And by we, I mean you, Eric. And you can do it, can't you? And I looked down there at this big mess, and I looked up into her eyes, and I said, "Yes, I can." So, for the next 3 hours, I was busy cutting and shaping it and sanding it and putting it back into an acceptable condition. Put it in the car. We brought it to the contest, and I was so proud. I had my uniform on, and I brought this in, and I put it down on the table with all of the other models, and it looked pretty good, blemishes and all. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And one of my competitors came up and started to examine it, and then he went and he got a judge, and he brought the judge back, and the judge, from the judge, he says, "Eric's cheating." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there's 2 engine parts that are 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 foot on the back to make these nacelles for the engines, and we were only given 1. And the judge looked at me and said, "Can you explain this?" And I said, "Yes, I can." We were given a 2 inch by 3 inch piece of board that was a foot long, and I went ahead and cut it in half. And the other competitor said, "You didn't do that." And I said, "Oh, yes, I did. You see this blood blister underneath my callus right here? This says differently." Well, at that, the competitor threw up his hands and left, and the judge, who was trying to be impartial, had to stop laughing. And so then all the judges got together that night and they voted. And wouldn't you know it, the Starship Enterprise won first place. And I learned something very important right then and there. First, I learned that you never, never, never give up. Now, that has been a saying in my household for generations. Generations. And it's folklore that Winston Churchill once heard us saying this and decided to borrow it for one of his most important speeches. And if you believe that, I've got some waterfront property in Arizona I can sell you at a steep discount. Just see me later. But the second thing that I learned from this is that you don't have to be perfect in order to win first place. My Starship Enterprise wasn't perfect. It won that night. And how many other times have you seen competitors fall down and get back up in order to get across that finish line? Or you've seen people who make a mistake, but they learn from it, and they keep going and improve. My mother taught us that you don't have to do everything perfectly to pick yourself up, to learn from your mistakes, and keep going. There's a third lesson that I'd like to share with you, and this is exemplified in Genesis 1:28. And this states, "And God blessed them and told them, 'Go forth and be fruitful and multiply, and populate the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over all of the fish in the sea, and over all the birds in the air, and over every living creature that moves on the earth.'" Now, my mother wasn't one for quoting scripture, but she certainly was one for acting on it. And she had a lot of us. Myself, Katrin, Kirsten, Ingrid, Macon, Hans, and Chris. 7 of us kids. And she must have taught us that lesson well, because I went off and had 6 of my own. Jessica, Jared, Mary, Caitlin, Laura. There you go, Laura. And Reagan. All of us. And it's not just that generation. Some of you know that Jessica got married last year to Kiefer Carter. And according to the ultrasound yesterday, there's another one coming on August 10th. The circle of life continues. Mom's legacy isn't just in filling us with the strength of her conviction, but filling us with the strength of numbers. Large, large numbers. And so, never, never, never give up. You don't have to be perfect in order to be in first place. And go forth, be fruitful, and multiply, and populate the earth, and subdue it, and take dominion over every fish in the sea, every bird flying out there in the sky, and over every living creature. My mother personified God's biological imperative.